Everyone, it's Mrs. B. I'm back to read to you again. I miss you all, and I hope you're all safe and well. And today we're going to read And Tango Makes Three. And this is by Simon and Schuster Publishers, which have given me permission to read this book to you. All right, here we go. In the middle of New York City, there is a great big park called Central Park. Children love to play there. It has a toy boat pond where they can sail their boats. It has a carousel to ride on in the summer and an ice rink to skate on in the winter. Best of all, it has its very own zoo. Every day, families of all kinds go to visit the animals that live there. But children and their parents aren't the only families at the zoo. The animals make families of their own. There are red panda bear families with mothers and fathers and furry red panda bear cubs. There are monkey dads and monkey moms, and monkey moms and dads that raise noisy monkey babies. There are toad families and toucan families and cotton top tamarin families too. And there they all are. Can you see them all in the jungle and in the trees? And in the penguin house, there are penguin families. Every year at the very same time, the girl penguins start noticing the boy penguins, and the boy penguins start noticing the girls. When the right girl and the right boy find each other, they become a couple. Two penguins in the penguin house were a little bit different. One was named Roy and the other was named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. They bowed to each other and they walked together. They sang to each other and they swam together. Wherever Roy went, Silo went too. They didn't spend much time with the girl penguins, and the girl penguins didn't spend much time with them either. Instead, Roy and Silo wound their necks around each other. Their keeper, Mr. Gramsci, noticed the two penguins and thought to himself, they must be in love. Roy and Silo watched how the other penguins made a home, so they built a nest of stones for themselves. Every night, Roy and Silo slept there together, just like the other penguin couples. And every morning, Roy and Silo woke up together. But one day, Roy and Silo saw that the other couples could do something they could not. The mama penguin would lay an egg. She and the papa penguin would take turns keeping the egg warm until finally it would hatch. And then there would be a baby penguin. See, like there's one there, and there's a baby penguin there, and a baby penguin there. Roy and Silo had no egg to sit on and keep warm. They had no baby chick to feed and cuddle and love. Their nest was nice, but it was a little empty. One day Roy found something that looked like what the other penguins were hatching, and he brought it to their nest. It was only a rock, but Silo carefully sat on it and sat and sat. When Silo got sleepy, he slept, and when Silo was done sleeping and sitting, he swam and Roy sat. Day after day, Silo and Roy sat on the rock. But nothing happened. See, there's their nest in the rock in the middle. No babies there. Then Mr. Gramsci got an idea. He found an egg that needed to be cared for, and he brought it to Roy and Silo's nest. Roy and Silo knew just what to do. They moved the egg to the center of their nest. Every day they turned it so each side stayed warm. Some days Roy sat while Silo went for food. Other days it was Silo's turn to take care of their egg. They sat in the morning and they sat at night. They sat through lunchtime and swim time and supper. They sat at the beginning of the month and they sat at the end of the month. And they sat all of the days in between. Until one day they heard a sound coming from inside the egg. Peep, 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 it said. Roy and Silo called back, squawk, squawk. Peep, peep, answered the egg. Suddenly, a tiny hole appeared in the egg shell. And then, see it? There's no hole there. There's a little crack and a longer crack and a little crack with a little hole and a longer crack with the hole getting a little bigger and bigger and bigger, and something's coming out. And something more is out and more. And there's the little baby's head and beak. They hatched a baby. Crack! Out came their very own baby. She had fuzzy white feathers and a funny black beak. Now Roy and Silo were fathers. We'll take care of her. We'll call her Tango. Mr. Gramsci decided because it takes two to make a tango. Roy and Silo taught Tango how to sing for them when she was hungry. They fed her food from their beaks. They snuggled her in their nest at night. Tango was the very first penguin in the zoo to have two daddies. Soon Tango grew strong enough to leave the nest. Roy and Silo took her for a swim, just like all the other penguin families, and all the children who came to the zoo could see Tango and her two fathers playing in the penguin house with other penguins. Hooray, Roy! Hooray, Silo! Welcome, Tango, they cheered. At night, the three penguins returned to their nest. There they snuggled together. And like all the penguins in the penguin house, and all the animals in the zoo, and all the families in the big city, all around them, they went to sleep. And that's the end. They have their happy family, and they get to snuggle and cuddle and love each other. That's a beautiful story. I hope you enjoyed it. And here's the author's note. I thought it was very interesting, so I'm going to share it with you. I hope you think it's interesting too. All of the events in this story are true. Roy and Silo are called chin-strap penguins because of the delicate line of black feathers that loops under their beaks, as if to hold a hat in place. After years of living side by side in the Central Park Zoo, they discovered each other in 1998, and they have been a couple ever since. Tango, their only chick, was born from an egg laid by another penguin couple named Betty and Porky. That couple had often hatched their own eggs, but they had never been able to care for more than one at a time. In 2000, when Betty laid two fertile eggs, Rob Gramsci decided to give Roy, Silo, and one of those eggs a chance to become a family. If you go to the Central Park Zoo, you can see Tango and her two parents splashing about in the penguin house, along with their friends, including Nipper, Squawk, Charlie, Wasabi, and Pee-wee. There are 42 chin-strap penguins in the Central Park Zoo, and over 10 million chin straps in the world. That's a lot of chin strap penguins, 10 million in the world. But there is only one Tango. So again, I hope you enjoyed the book and Tango Makes Three. And I'd like to say a special thank you to my grandson Gus because this is his book and we got the opportunity to share it together. And before I go, we're going to read from Charlotte's Web again because every time I read to the second graders, we'd always read a chapter. So as you remember, and I'll remember with you, Fern is the little girl in Wilbur, and Wilbur's best friend is Charlotte, the spider. And the last time we read, they were talking about the goose who had 7 gooseling eggs and babies, and one, the 8th one, didn't have a baby, so they let Templeton the rat eat her. And then they found out, and Wilbur found out, that he was going to be supper for Mr. Zuckerman and the people at the farm. But Charlotte said she was going to save him so that they weren't going to cook him and have him for supper. So let's see what happens. There are no pictures here, so I'll read the book, and we're on Chapter 8, A Talk at Home. On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arable, and that's Fern's parents, Aunt Fern was sitting at the breakfast in the kitchen. Avery had finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. Did you know that Uncle Homer's goslings had hatched? Asked Fern. How many? Asked Mr. Arable. 7, replied Fern. There were 8 eggs, but 1 egg didn't hatch, and the goose told Templeton she didn't want it anymore, so he took it away. The goose did what? Asked Mrs. Arable, gazing at her daughter with a queer, worried look. Told Templeton she didn't want the egg anymore, repeated Fern. Who is Templeton? Asked Mrs. Arable. He's the rat, replied Fern. None of us like him much. Who's us? Asked Mr. Arable. Oh, everybody in the barn cellar. Wilbur and the sheep and the lambs and the goose and the gander and the goslings and Charlotte and me. Charlotte, said Mrs. Arable. Who's Charlotte? She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever. What does she look like? Asked Mrs. Arable. Well, said Fern thoughtfully. She has 8 legs. All spiders do, I guess. Charlotte is a spider? Asked Fern's mother. Fern nodded. A big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood. Wilbur adores her. Does he really? Said Mrs. Arable, rather vaguely. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression on her face. Oh, yes, Wilbur adores Charlotte, said Fern. Do you know what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched? I haven't the faintest idea, said Mr. Arable. Tell us. Well, when the first gosling stuck its little head out from under the goose, I was sitting on my stool in the corner, and Charlotte was on her web. She made a speech. She said, I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it. Don't you think that was a pleasant thing for her to say? Yes, I do, said Mrs. Arable. And now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school. And tell Avery to get ready. And this afternoon you can tell me more about what goes on in Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there almost every afternoon, don't you? I like it there, replied Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs. After she left the room, Mrs. Arable spoke in a low voice to her husband. I worry about Fern, she said. Did you hear the way she rambled on about the animals, pretending that they talked? Mr. Arable chuckled. Maybe they do talk, he said. I've sometimes wondered. At any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's got a lively imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things. Just the same, I do worry about her, said Mrs. Arable. I think I shall ask Dr. Dorian about her the next time I see him. He loves Fern almost as much as we do, and I want him to know how queerly she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well, animals don't talk. Mr. Arable grinned. Maybe our ears aren't as sharp as Fern's, he said. And that's the end of that chapter. So we'll see what happens the next time. And we'll read some more from Charlotte's Web the next time. And for now, stay safe, stay well. I miss you, and I hope you enjoyed listening to this book. I enjoyed reading it to you. Take care, everyone.